Hello and welcome to my monthly wrap up where I briefly discuss the books that I read this month. Not all of them, because I did read a total of 54 books this month. Out of those 54 books, 13 were DNFs, which is around 21%. So about 21% of the books I read this month, I DNF. But let me tell you about the other books that I did read. So out of all of the books, I've put all the genres that I read. I'm not going to do this for next month because after writing up all the genres, I realized pretty much I read from every single genre. But obviously the genres are up here, so you can see the genres that I read from, which is basically it. Obviously nonfiction encompasses a broad amount of books, but I didn't want to list every single one of the genres of the nonfiction books I read. So basically I'm just going to talk about the books that I rated 4 stars and up, and then I'm just going to mention 2 of the worst. So I'm going to start with the worsts, get them out the way. The worst DNF that I had was The Last Tale of the Flowered Bride. This just did not mesh with me at all. I actually became quite physically irate when reading it. The over-the-top, flowery, extravagant writing that was quite often nonsensical and just unnecessary was suffocating. And then the main 2 characters had an absolutely awful, toxic marriage, and I couldn't stand them and the games that they were playing with each other. It just peeved me, so I quickly DNF'd that. And the lowest rated book for this month was a 2-star book for Chilling Effect. This book promised psychic cats and then did not deliver. So that was just the most frustrating part of this book, and it was very much mediocre just all the way through. There's nothing I loved about it, but I was just very upset and disappointed that something was promised and not delivered, especially because I ended up getting it for free in another book that I did not think it was going to be. And just, there we go, here's a psychic cat for you. So I did end up getting my psychic cats, just not in this book. Now on to the best books that I read this month. We'll start with my 4 stars and work my way up to number 1. So with 4 stars, I have The Stars. This was a sci-fi book that just has my favorite trope of a grouchy female captain and her ragtag crew in their crumbling ship, who unfortunately, begrudgingly, have to take on a mission from a dark, mysterious, grumpy, generally male stranger who is also an alien. I just loved it. I love the dynamic. I love the relationships, and the story was great. So this was Hunt the Stars. Also coming in with 4 stars was a nonfiction, The Invisible Kingdom, which talks about chronic illness and visible illnesses that people can't tell from looking at you. Like, wow, you don't look sick. It's that sort of thing. I felt very seen by this. It was very comforting to know that others have also had very tough journeys in even getting their illnesses diagnosed. So this was just a very validating book for me, and I enjoyed it. Coming in at 4.5 stars, almost 5. It would be a 5, but because of the tone and the story, it's not a 5. And that is I Who Have Never Known Men. This is beautifully haunting. It is enraging. It is heartbreaking. It is raw and emotional, and I loved it. It was unlike anything I've read before. Basically, a young girl wakes up in this prison with 39 other women of varying ages. None of them know how they got there. They don't know why they're there. They are given no answers. They are beaten and they are left to live this very monotonous life in this prison cell until one day something happens. They don't even know if they're on Earth anymore. I can't talk about it much. Viewing the story through the eyes of this, they call her the child. You never know her name, and her journey as she grows up in what is going on around her. It is basically just a story of what it is to be human, and love and loss and life and death. And it was just chilling. I still think about it. I'm sure this is a book that I will eventually, just randomly think about from time to time, and be really thankful for my life here. It really makes you feel grateful for what you have, and you're not in this woman's situation. But wonderful. Even though it's translated and the language is simple, it packs a punch. So that was I Who Have Never Known Men. And then with my 5-star reads, I have a poetry book. I rate poetry way differently, obviously, so is what it is. It's a 5-star in terms of poetry, meaning that I generally liked more than half of the poems in this book, and that was Homebody. Yeah, it was some tough subject matter. There's a lot, for instance, sexual assault is mentioned in this, but I found their poems very easy to read. I found a lot of sentences that really just struck me, and like I said, more than half of the poems I felt resonated, and therefore that's what makes it a 5-star poetry book. And then for my 5-star book, it was actually a non-fiction, The Magic of Mushrooms. This was absolutely gorge. The way it was executed, the illustrations, the subject matter, the way it's written, it was just so palatable. It was a feast for the eyes. It was easy to read. It was fun. It was fun. So obviously it doesn't go in depth on each subject, and that's why it's just easy to read, because you could get this like little morsel of information in whatever that they were talking about, and then you can move on to the next thing. So it was so fun to learn all about fungi. So this includes mushrooms, molds, yeasts, lichen, all that stuff, and how they affect us in this world, what their role is in this world. And that's in terms of their culinary uses, when they're used as medicines, as poisons, as spiritual tools, as well as their roles in folklore and magic, and just everything, their role in the ecosystem, their effect on pop culture and film and television, and just the whole smorgasbord. I didn't even know there was that much to do with fungi, but this was phenomenal, and I loved it so much that I have purchased my own copy, and it's on its way. I just had to own it. It was just a piece of art in a book, and that was definitely my absolute favorite book of this month. And it is one of the books that I have also, that I am doing as part of my Wilder Ones book club. So even though I've given away that it's a 5-star book, you can hear my in-depth thoughts about it there. Because I go into everything. So that was my reading month for March. Not as many 4 stars and up books as I would have liked. That's what we're always hoping for when you pick up a book. Basically, to have 5 out of 54 books for each set is a bit low. It's a bit low for me. But yeah, I've just got to figure out what it is. How am I picking incorrectly? I've got to really refine my selection process. But that being said too, I am someone who does also like to read out of their comfort zone. I do just like to randomly pick up a book that has a pretty cover from the library. So that probably comes into play quite a bit. They're not all, carefully selected. There are some random spontaneous choices coming in there. Yeah, I still had enough that I feel like my soul is satisfied. My need for a great story. I've had enough. I've had enough wonderful stories to digest this month. But I'm looking forward to next month. So I hope that wherever you are, you're having a marvelous afternoon or evening. And as always, stay wild, Star Child.